thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I also had a fun realization because when I was rafting, I had my flip line on me all the time, right? You can raft and if it flips, lost my crew, right? But it's a loop for other purposes, but you wear it around your waist. And one day I had a realization. I was like, wait, I have a fucking harness around my waist because I can just take that flip line. See what I just did?
Thanks, Patrick. That was wonderful. All right. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. My name is Elisa Enriquez, and I'm a worship associate here. Our minister, Reverend John Cullinan, has off today, and I'm so delighted that we have Renae Mitchell here as our guest speaker. And we welcome all of you, whether you're here in person or online. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the interconnection of us all. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment, and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you're joining for the first time, we invite you to talk to any one of us or the Reverend DeYoe, our Director of Religious Lifespan Education. And if you're watching online, please sign the virtual guest book. And after the service today, there'll be another announcement about this, but everyone's invited to have coffee, and we are going to have our annual meeting as well for members. Let us begin worship. We come from many places, along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories and different realities, and yet we come together as one people, with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we might find others who are much like us and others who are much different. May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories with many voices, but always one people working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace.
Our opening song today is Shabbat Shalom, which is the traditional Jewish greeting on the Sabbath, and it means peaceful Sabbath, or may peace be with you on this Sabbath day. In addition to being a greeting, it is also a symbol of connection and unity, and a means to enter into an atmosphere of Sabbath, which is a sacred day of rest and worship for the Jewish culture. Sabbath is a special time in which families join together to reflect and celebrate, and as we gather together this morning also to reflect and celebrate, we invite you to share this musical greeting with us. Please stand as you are able and join in singing the Hebrew as you feel comfortable. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, I was going to say to please remain standing, but that's okay. You can sit down if you like. And we'll share in the affirmation of our church. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. You may sit down.
Good morning. My name is Tina DeYoe. I use she, her pronouns. And this morning we have some candles lit over here in our joys and sorrows area. And so just for a reminder for new folks, old folks, at any point before the candles of community in our service, you are able to write your joys or your sorrows, celebrations, laments in this book if you want them read aloud here. And so we have some written today. We have a couple of celebratory announcements, or joys, I should say. So Andy Enriquez, who is one of our youth in high school, Elisa's son, qualified for state track in the 800 meters on Saturday. So that was super awesome. Please send him our congratulations. We also want to celebrate Jade, formerly Portillos, who is KokHeong and Mike McNaughton's granddaughter. She got married yesterday, and so we're celebrating Jade's marriage to Mitch. How do you say the last name? Foff, yesterday in Santa Fe. So yay on, yes, their marriage. Please send them our congratulatory message as well. And today is May 5th, and it is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Awareness Day. And I wanted us to be aware of that issue in our country, in our nation, in our continent, in other nations, that missing, murdered Indigenous women and persons is a big issue that we need to sit and think about and commit to doing work around that issue, right? As community, as people who are immigrants to this land or are Indigenous to this land, we need to be aware of murdered, missing, and Indigenous peoples on this day. So thank you for taking a moment of silence for that.
Hi, everybody. This morning, I would like to read you a poem. This is written by Ursula Le Guin. I know we have some really big fans here. So this poem was written just a few months before she passed away. And it is actually made up of alternating lines from Charles Darwin's, Galileo's, and Giordano Bruno's writings. And I'm going to pause after each line so that you can see where I'm switching authors. There is grandeur. The sun, with all the circling planets it sustains. God is glorified and the greatness of his kingdom made manifest in this view of life. The sun, with all the circling planets yet. Glorified not in one, but in countless suns. From so simple a beginning, endless forms. The sun, with all the planets it sustains, yet can ripen a bunch of grapes. Not in a single earth, a single world, but in 1,000,000 endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful. The sun can ripen a bunch of grapes as if it had nothing else in the universe to do. Not in a single world, but in 1,000,000, an infinity of worlds. Endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved, as if it had nothing else in the universe to do. All things are in the universe, and the universe is in all things, we in it, and it in us. There is grandeur in this view of life.
If you happen to have a turquoise supplement with you, please turn to number 1043. This is Zekeli Aldash. It's based on a traditional Hungarian blessing with music by UU musician Elizabeth Norton. It was composed for the choir of First Parish in Concord, Massachusetts, when they took a summer musical pilgrimage to Transylvania in 2002. We have sung or played Zekeli Aldash several times in our congregation, most memorably when we sang it with members of our sister congregation from Romania several years ago. The setting of the blessing is a partner song with the first melody sung in Hungarian or Transylvanian, the second melody in English. We will sing the Transylvanian text first, the English second, and then both parts together. And so if you're looking either at the slide, if we could put the slide up, or at your book, part 1, this is the pronunciation for the Hungarian. Hol hit ot szeretet. Hol szeretet ot beke. Hol beke ot áldás. Hol áldás ot Isten. Hol Isten ot szükség nincsen. So you are welcome to sing whichever part you feel most comfortable with.
Is it on? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming up. So today we are talking about different languages. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Do you like different languages? Raise your hand. Do you know how to speak any different languages, maybe? Maybe say a few words. Yeah? A tiny bit, yeah, right? Cool. Like, maybe you know how to say thank you in different languages. Does anyone? No? No? Gracias? Gracias? Danke? Yeah, that's thank you. And gracias is Spanish, and danke is German, and xie is Chinese. Yeah, so that's how you say thank you in different languages, right? So we're talking, say again. You say, I'm not a rat in French? How do you say I'm not a rat in French? Okay, would you speak it in the microphone?
Je ne suis pas un rat.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Good job. That's awesome. That's pretty much it. I think this is a good phrase to learn. Good job. Yes, this is good. I love it. I love it. Yes. So there are many languages in our world. I don't even know how many. There's so many, right? Too many for me to count. Maybe 100, maybe more, right? And so we're talking about the diversity and beauty of different languages today. And so this is a story, a myth, right? It's a story, it's a myth, you know. And so we're gonna talk about this myth. It's an Aztec story, right, from Mexico. And it's from their Aztec text, Cuatro Soles, 4 sons. So this is a neat story and myth to share that explains how maybe humans learned how to speak so many different languages. So this is a story about that. Yeah? All right. So the first inhabitants of the earth were a single man named Kosh Kosh and a woman called Teoquipatli, who had several children. The world had been destroyed and recreated by the gods 3 times already. But these 2 human beings realized that the great rains they experienced one day was actually a flood that would drown them. Kosh Kosh and Teoquipatli carved a boat from a cypress tree and rescued their children and animals they would need to survive. When the waters appeared to begin receding, they released several birds. And one day, the colibri, the hummingbird, returned with small leaves, and Kosh Kosh and Teoquipatli landed at the sacred mountain of Colucan. The couple, afterward, had many more children, all of whom were born unable to speak. They remained silent until one day a dove from the top of a tree taught each of these children a different language. So that is an Aztec story of maybe how different languages came to being, right? It's a story, right? So that is our story today about the different languages. And we have some coloring sheets on the intention table. One says peace. This is peace, but in Spanish, paz, right? So you can color that one. And then we have peace in English, and we have shalom, which we were singing earlier, and we have salam. Shalom is Hebrew, and then we have salam, which is Arabic right here. So we have both of those. So you guys can go color your different language words of peace on the intention table. So thank you for coming up. Yeah.
So our reading today comes from an anthology of Simone Weil, who was a philosopher in the early half of the 20th century. By the power of words, we always mean their power of illusion and error. But thanks to a providential arrangement, there are certain words which possess in themselves, when properly used, a virtue that illuminates and lifts up toward the good. These are the words that refer to an absolute perfection that we cannot conceive. Since the proper use of these words involves not trying to make them fit any conception, it is in the words themselves, as words, that the power to enlighten and draw upward resides. What they express is beyond our conception. Truth is one of those words, also justice, love, and good. And so as far as I know, she wasn't actually a UU, but that was a very UU thing to say. So Tina was wondering about how many languages there are in the world. There are 195 countries in the world, and among them, over 7,000 distinct languages are spoken. Yeah. I crunched the numbers, and that's about 36 languages per country on average. 36. If I were an alien visiting Earth, and with my extraterrestrial technology, I have the ability to do this math, I would probably wonder how on earth human beings manage to communicate. Assuming, of course, I was a monolingual alien from a monolingual world. But fortunately for us human beings, our world has not imploded due to language diversity. In fact, linguistic diversity is a fundamental aspect of human identity and communication. It shapes our communities and perceptions, and embracing this diversity is necessary for fostering empathy, connection, and mutual understanding, as we see throughout human history and in the history of our country, well, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the acceptance of different modes of speech is often met with intolerance, and I'd like to consider with you why this is and how we can adjust our perspectives, or at least think more deeply about those voices that we don't always understand. So in the US, there is a push to instantiate an official language. That's right, there's no official language in the US. So this effort is called the English-only movement, and its purpose is to make English both the official language of the US and the only language allowed to be used in any official capacity, in the federal government especially. Last year, for example, J.D. Vance, a senator from Ohio, introduced a bill that would restrict all interactions with the federal government to English only, in spite of the fact that local government institutions offer bilingual services to accommodate those who simply seek help to pay their local taxes, for example. So why doesn't the US have an official language like so many other countries do? For one reason, never in our history, except for a brief period during the Prohibition era, has the amendment process been used to revoke basic rights. But from the earliest days of the formation of our country, way back in the 17th century, our earliest leaders promoted ideals of individual liberty, especially in the light of the fact that much of the population of the early colonies spoke German, Dutch, Flemish, French, Danish, Norwegian, and so many other languages. Those early signers of the Declaration of Independence intentionally chose not to impose a particular language onto the population of the soon-to-be country, precisely because it would undermine their ideals and harm the tenuous unity they were hoping would sustain them through the impending revolution. For those reasons and others, we do not have an official language in the US. In my lifetime, though, the English-only movement has been gaining ground. Of course, we all know why there is a movement to restrict our communication to just English, and it's not to improve communication. The effort to overturn the intentional decision made by the country's earliest leaders would deepen the divisions we're seeing today. So what is language then, and is a difference in our form of communication at the heart of our divisions today, as some would like to argue? Language isn't simply the means we use to pass on information from one person to another. It's a means to convey compassion, frustration, communicate one's beliefs and values, create and solidify communities, and so many other purposes. But these days, though not for the first time, differences in values, culture, and just understandings of basic human rights are creating misunderstanding and division. And this division will not be resolved by English only, Klingon only, or whatever other language restriction we want to impose. There's a deeper rift occurring behind our words. The nuances of language have been a central part of my life, having grown up in a bilingual home. My mother's accented English contributed to almost constant misunderstandings between her and English speakers in Louisiana. I never had any issues understanding my mother, and I had a hard time understanding why anyone else did. To be fair, though, if residents of Louisiana didn't hear the y'all, yunder, and other code words that were common in the South, you were dismissed as an outsider no matter your accent. In my case, though, my father, who only spoke English and was born in Louisiana, did not allow any of us to speak Spanish in our home. So language, I realized, seemed to justify exclusion and conflict, and I just couldn't understand why. I was better able to articulate language nuances during my graduate school education, and I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. But my fascination and fixation with language really led me on this path. My doctorate is in literature, comparative literature to be precise, and is what I believe to be one of the most misunderstood of graduate programs. I'm very often met with, and not just in Los Alamos, "Oh, so you read lots of books. That sounds like a really fun degree." You might be surprised to learn that reading literature is actually the least of what I did in grad school. And I don't mean partying. See, literary study is inherently multidisciplinary. To understand writing, you need to grasp historical, political, social, etc. context, which form the frameworks within which an author writes. Critical thought, linguistics, metaphor, and cultural experience also feed into literary work. And that's why, in my opinion, there is no better way to understand a period of human existence than by the study of its literature. You can argue with me after the service. But as I mentioned, my grad degree was in comparative literature, which makes this conversation about my graduate program even more complicated, because this field requires its adherents to additionally read and speak about a breadth of literature written in multiple languages in their original language. But Renae, what is the point of all of that extra work? Why not just read all of this literature in English translations? Don't you get just as good a grasp of its cultural context? Of course, the answer is no. And that's because we all know there is something that is lost in translation. The meaning that native speakers understand, it's that language within a language. The scholar Walter Benjamin noted that the language of translation is like, quote, a royal robe. It signifies a more exalted language than its own and remains unsuited to its content, end quote. And there is an actual word for this language within a language. It's called subtext. And yeah, subtext. Let's see, oops. Oh, I'll get to that in a second. Oh, man. A language's subtext includes nearly everything that's left out when you simply translate words from one language to another. It's what's lost in translation. And you remember that film of the poster I just showed you? You could have just renamed it subtext. Nice and short. What do you think? Yeah? No? So my academic focus on comparative literature revealed to me the importance of subtext, and that its relevance actually extends far beyond literary analysis. Subtext shapes our everyday interactions and perceptions. And this was a sort of epiphany to me. Human beings don't just speak distinct monolithic languages like Spanish, Swahili, Polish, etc. We, in day-to-day life, speak languages that are formed from our values and our backgrounds. Metaphorical languages where so much of our life experiences actually shape the meanings of our words. For example, one word that kept me from stepping foot in the UU church much earlier than I actually did was the word church. The word embodied for me oppression, dogmatism, abuse, hypocrisy. And those who had similar experiences with mine in our younger years all shared this definition of church without having to explain it to each other. We had a common bond and a common language. We had a shared subtext. And those who didn't speak this subtext couldn't fit entirely in my closest social circle. I and friends like me had an unfair bias with regard to church people, and that was written into the language we spoke. So the meanings that we in our communities speak cause us to sometimes misunderstand each other, that we're all speaking English, for example. But facts and evidence, which don't seem to be up for debate, seem a language all their own these days. A language that can be translated, interpreted, and rewritten to serve the interests of the speaker. We seem to be living in the shadow of a new and tilted Tower of Babel. And in case you've forgotten this story, long ago, humans all spoke the same language, but in their hubris, decided to build a tower so high it would reach the realm that belonged to deity alone. Much like the ancient Greek gods who revealed themselves to be quite insecure, the god Yahweh caused the builders to suddenly speak numerous languages and scatter over the earth, abandoning the tower. It's an ancient example of gatekeeping. And there, in the story, we see the diversity of language as a punishment. But I'd bet all of you, see linguistic difference as a beautiful and very human trait. Misunderstanding, whether due to languages or different subtexts, is part of it, though the hope is we come to an understanding based in justice, equity, and compassion. As a literary scholar, I'm often expected to promote a purity and correctness of language use, and though I admit I've been often accused of being a member of the undercover grammar police, I absolutely do not believe in a purity of language. But why? How can I, of all people, not believe in this? Wouldn't that contribute to all of us better understanding each other if we all spoke the same language in its purest form correctly? Well, the diversity of language is its strength, ironically. Language is alive. It's a living creature, in my view, constantly changing, growing, reproducing. But because language lives, it does not remain the same with every passing year. And even each day that passes, our language is undergoing an evolution. With new media, new works of art, new technological advances, our language changes, and in trying to hold on to purest ideas of what language ought to be, we're holding on to stilted values, cultural stagnation, and intolerance. For example, border languages such as Tex-Mex, or also called Texican, are precisely what the English-only movement and other similar movements and beliefs are hoping to stamp out. But this regional dialect illustrates the incredible flexibility of human communication. This being the case, I'd like, ironically, perhaps to return to the Tower of Babel. The tower is an example of a literary trope, a symbol that we see recurring in literature and myth. And this symbol is called, and bear with me, I'm going to be a little academic here, an axis mundi. Okay. And the axis mundi is so common in human storytelling that it reveals to us that human beings from cultures all over the world have been trying to reach upward in order to speak with what they consider the divine. What is an axis mundi exactly? It is a tall object whose height makes it seem possible for us tiny beings on the ground to speak to one's deity up close. And this possibility is echoed in spoken, sacred stories and sacred texts, and also sacred sites. For example, let's see, this spire, one of the tallest in the world, it's the Ulm-Minster in Germany. There's also the Yggdrasil, the Scandinavian Tree of Life, and the Mesoamerican, this is El Castillo at Chichen Itza. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take that picture myself. So each of these is a means of translating one's lowly human language to the unreachable, the heights of the heavens, highlighting the universal human desire for connection, transcending linguistic and cultural barriers. For each of these sacred axis mundi, there is no need to speak the local language or even get the subtext I mentioned earlier. There's simply the bending of one's intention and faith toward a shared point of focus, and the belief that one's voluntad, a Spanish word meaning will and intention, can reach far beyond oneself and into the unknown. And so the Robinson window, our own axis mundi, is a great example of this. It illustrates our intention to progress upward, right? That we're growing toward a shared goal, that's articulated in our UU values. So when we human beings look up at a star, the moon, a cloud, an airplane, we know that it's very likely there are other human beings far away whom we've never met who are looking at that same spot at the same time somewhere. And so I would like to end with my very winding talk with just a reminder that, again, linguistic diversity is really fundamental to us. By keeping in mind our shared subtext, the differences of our language, and the multiplicity of our perspectives. And to always remember to look up. Sorry, excuse me. I lost my place. Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap up here because I also lost my last page. Yeah, so it's a universal symbol, and I hope that you will all keep it in mind as you hopefully look up as you leave the church today. Thank you.
Today's offering is for the JJAB, which is the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. And the offering is an opportunity to just share some of what we have with the wider world. 100% of everything you provide today or give today will be given to JJAB. And for those of you who don't know about the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, they actually offer a lot of services that for teens and their families who would otherwise go unnoticed, oftentimes, because they're in need of services. So their case workers do a phenomenal job. They also do restorative justice. So may what you give bring you joy. All right, so for announcements today, I'll start off with one that I think I left off in the bulleted section. Our forum speaker next Sunday will be Barbara Gabu. She's a Silver City UU. She's going to describe and discuss the amazing twists and turns of the Border Assistance Project her community has been doing for approximately 5 years. This UU fellowship has galvanized their county and has over 600 online supporters. And then as well as we have the annual meeting today and free lunch. So please don't forget to stick around for lunch and the annual meeting. Registration for the UU Women's register for the Dr. Seuss Summer RE Camp, which is June 24th through 28th. You can talk to Reverend Tina DeYoe again. And then there's a women's circle tonight, as well as a community plant swap on the 11th from 9 to 12. Building maintenance work party on the 18th, and an all-ages mural painting party on the 19th. So more announcements, of course, are available on the back of your order of service as well as online. All right. Oop, there we go. So now, if you don't mind, join in singing our closing song, and I'm going to let Nylea take over.
So if you have your supplement, please turn to number 1030. So this is a South African freedom song. It's called Siyahamba. It's from the apartheid era. It's unclear who actually composed it, but Anders Nyberg, who's a musical director of Fiddle, a Swedish choral group, learned it on one of his trips to Cape Town, and in 1984 he arranged it into a 4-part setting, which is what is in our hymnal. We're going to sing it first in Zulu, then we'll sing it in English, and then we'll finish with the Zulu. So I'm going to go over that with you. Siyahambe kukanyen kwen kos. Lots of K's. Siyahambe kukanyen kwen kos. Siyahambe kukanyen kwen kos. And if you can't get that, you can just say, Siyahamba, Siyahamba, Siyahamba. Ooh, Siyahamba, Siyahamba, Siyahamba kukanyen kwen kos. So if the Zulu's a bit much for you, then you can just join in when we get to the English. We invite you to stand as you are able and even dance a little bit if you wish.
Yeah.
going to use this benediction to just thank you all for coming today. Thank you all for being patient with me. And it's going to be a tough year, but I think if we all stand together, we'll support each other and we will get through it. Yeah, thank you.